approach all things
with reason.
Reason.
Reasonable.
Dissent.
Reasonable Dissent with the Black Wolf and Copus Malini.
How's it going, man?
Going pretty good. Interesting start.
Yeah, we were talking about resentments.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I held a lot of when I was in, my teens and early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I was bullied a lot as a child.
Yeah.
And there was a point in my life where I literally wrote down every single person that I had a resentment, dating all the way back when I was like a kid, and I had to find like my part inside all these resentments. Like, if also try to find some common themes. So I think I'm resentment free today. I do have to let things go daily. Yeah. Like there are things that go on inside the news. And there's people I've never met that I get angry at, like maybe a Bill Gates. Yeah. But then at the same time, I kind of have to just...
Well, that's one thing to get mad at somebody, but it's another thing to hold resentment. I think what the kind of resentment that we were talking about was had more to do with, holding resentment toward things that have happened to us in the past. And you said something there about, when you were younger, you had a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And that, I had the same problem as well. And one of the things that I've come to understand about resentment is that it's based almost entirely on the ego, and of course as young people, younger folks will always have a very intense ego.
Of course, we need one.
Yeah,
we're inexperienced, and
exactly.
We need some sort of buffer between us and the world.
Exactly, and so we start walking around trying to put up a display that we want the world to see this, not who we really are, which again goes to the book thing. But
the book thing.
Well, it's in my book, which we'll cover in another podcast. But
you want to do like a chapter by chapter in another podcast, or you think it's just something?
Well, other episode. I mean, we'll talk about my book, but I wanted to actually point something out, because there was something that I had pointed out in my book having to do with resentment.
Yeah.
So I reference a lot of Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, and because I find a lot of useful material in here. And in chapter 11, he points out,
and Tao Te Ching, that's like the way of, right?
Yeah, that's the way of.
And this philosopher named Ching?
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu. Okay, is this the same man who wrote The Art of War?
No. You're thinking about Sun Tzu.
I'm thinking about Sun Tzu. Lao Tzu is a different guy.
Lao Tzu is an individual who only showed up on the world scene one time, and that was to write this book.
Really? That's the only book ever written by that individual.
He disappeared after that. And one of the stories surrounding him. Now there are also some stories about it's a possibility that this was written by multiple philosophers, but I don't think so. The concept.
It's Socrates sort of deal.
Yeah, it's sort of the thing that as he was leaving town, one of the guards stopped him and said, "Hey, write me some of your wisdom," and he wrote this book.
How old is this book?
My goodness,
this publication was 1982.
Right? No, man, this is my goodness.
Is this pre-Christ, post-Christ?
I want to say it's pre. Yeah, it's pre. Tao Te Ching, written in the 6th century BC.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So but I find a lot of useful information, a lot of useful material in this, and I also go through the book of Proverbs as well in the Bible. But one of the things that I found in here.
I'm sorry, I'm just breaking everything
no, you're
down.
Good.
But how'd you come across that book? Yeah.
I do not remember.
How long has the book been in your life?
Couple years now.
Okay.
I want to say that I heard on a video on YouTube someone referenced the Tao Te Ching, and or referenced Lao Tzu, and I had seen a couple of quotes, and one day just did a quick YouTube search and up popped an audio book, so I went and grabbed a physical book.
Yeah.
And each version of the Tao Te Ching is going to have a different
interpretation.
Translation, kind of, but it's same words. And this we can talk about that at another time as well. About when you go in, everyone wants to yell and scream about the multiple different versions of the Bible, but it's still the same Bible. No one talks about the multiple different versions of the Tao Te Ching, and it's still the same Tao Te Ching. So it's just the translators that you're paying attention to there. But on the subject of resentment, there was something that I came across in chapter 11 that to me spoke a lot about it.
We got some real small chapters inside this book.
Oh yeah, it's like chapter 11 is 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs.
It's like
4 very small,
8 different fortune
proverbial
cookies.
Paragraphs, right?
Yeah.
And then chapter 12 is the next page, and it's 1 paragraph. So it's a very small book. I mean, each chapter, it's got...
but every time you reference it, it's like one of those things you got to sit and meditate on every sentence, because you can't just hear those words and be like, all right, well, let's do this.
Right.
It's like...
Right. It's not a simple, quick thing. It's like everything in there is going to have multiple things that you can talk about.
Layers, is poetry. Yeah. So anyway, what was this one on page 11, or I'm sorry, chapter 11?
In chapter 11, we were talking about resentment. Chapter 11, I come across this thing that says, and I'm just going to keep it very, very short on this one. 30 spokes are joined together in a wheel, but it is the center hole that allows the vehicle to function. We mold clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that makes the vessel useful. And the chapter continues from there. But one of the things that I have found that to be useful, one of the areas that I found that to be useful is in this area of resentment. Is it, if we consider ourselves a vessel.
Yeah.
Right? Now the vessel is meant to have a purpose.
Yes.
But if it's just a solid block of clay, what good is that purpose?
Yeah, and it's like a...
It has to be...
door stop or something.
Exactly, a paperweight or, a weapon. But has to be the emptiness inside that gives it its purpose, gives it its use.
Yes.
The thing is...
Character.
Exactly. When we fill it up with resentment, there's no room for anything else.
Yes.
Okay? And how do we fill it up with resentment? We fill it up with things that don't belong there.
Okay.
Okay? We put stuff in there that don't belong in the cup, in the vessel. So consider this vessel to be us.
All right.
Right? When I put something in there like that, how full do you think that thing's going to get when I start pouring water in it?
It's not going to be as full as it could. It's not reaching its full capacity. So, resentments hold us back. Some people are more prone to get resentments. How would you define resentment anyhow? Because I was just talking about, I might be mad at the TV sometimes, political figure might piss me off.
Yeah, that's not resentment. That's not resentment. When you're holding resentment in your heart, basically what you end up with is you have allowed some part of your mind, some part of your heart, some part of your life to be occupied by events of the past that are, for all practical purposes, dead and gone, and should be dead and gone.
So it's hanging on to something from the past and with a negative connotation, but there's blame involved in resentment too, isn't there?
Exactly.
So when you blame people for things, but you can have resentment towards institutions too. You could be resentful at the two-party system. A lot of people dwell on that, and
that's the thing. You're dwelling on the things that create the anger.
Right.
Yeah, And that's the thing is that when you do that, when you dwell on the things that create the anger and that cause that feeling of animosity,
or they could be resentful towards like a partner that they're currently like involved with. They could get resentful because that person never lets them finish their sentence, right?
Yeah. But yeah, no, and see that's true. That's true. And what ends up happening as you start to carry that resentment, it becomes like a poison. Okay?
Sure.
It stops the vessel from being able to function as it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain point you have to get rid of it.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on, keeping your vessel clear, and resentments, are one of the things. I'm sure we could put a few other things into the container that don't belong there. Abusive eating, drinking, drug use, all that's going to make your vessel not so useful.
Right, exactly. Right?
Mm-hmm. But the resentfulness is, I guess, more of a silent one, because we it's when we're drinking and we wake up with a hangover, we recognize a pattern, we can lie to ourselves, but it's like kind of there. It's more, people might point it out, but the resentment of someone that, maybe robbed you of your future. Like, I used to hold a resentment towards my parents because I was a very good student, and I was groomed to go to a great college because I was in AP classes and was in the academic decathlon. But they both discouraged. My mom didn't discourage, but my stepdad discouraged the idea of college, and he was kind of right, really. At the time, At the time, I was resentful because I saw other people moving forward with their life, and I was still like waiting tables. And I was like, "Geez, I'm a smart guy. I get no respect over here." But
no respect at all.
That's how I felt. Like the world was passing me by, and if they would have recognized the brilliance that I was exhibiting,
there's that ego in there.
Then
right?
I would be much further along inside life, and I'm really glad I didn't go do that, because I didn't have any direction, or the direction I did have definitely wasn't college based.
Yeah.
And it would have been a big financial mistake. But people do that for years. I know my uncle, when he was a teenager, he was promised when he finished high school he was going to own a home. Because my dad, I'm sorry, not my dad, my grandpa, he owned two homes. He owned the home that my uncle and his sisters and my grandma and everyone lived in, and then he owned another home that was for his mother, or my uncle's grandma. And that home was going to be my uncle's. What ended up happening, though, is when grandma died, he didn't get that home. The other children from that family took over that home and had her sign over the lease. And so he held resentment his whole entire life, thinking, hey, my life was going to be set. I'm going to be a homeowner right out of high school. And he never confronted that. And he was still holding that resentment in his 50s. I haven't talked to my uncle in a while. He's kind of disowned the family. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. But last time I spoke to him, he was really angry about that. Because he felt like, hey, I was lied to. Which we all have been lied to in our life, right?
We've all faced some betrayal somewhere along the way,
Yeah. And you kind of got to just be like, oh, shit,
We start to see what that can do to a person's life there is when they don't let it go. There's certain things that we hear people saying it all the time about various things. Let it go, let it go, let it go. But we don't understand the concept of what happens if you don't, and why. Even though we see those things happening, we see what happens. So this person over here won't let go of whatever bothering him from the past, right? And we see his life is in shambles. Every time you talk to him, he keeps bringing it up.
Right.
Right, and it becomes like a broken record.
Like the woman that can't find love, but every time they approach a man, they talk about how shitty their ex was.
Exactly. Or how shitty men are.
Yes.
Right? And things like that. And you're going, that, when you hold resentment, it destroys you. And then that breeds resentment. And then eventually it leads into cruelty. You start to become cruel toward others. Right?
Yeah, you're bitter, old, and cruel, right?
I used to hold resentment against my parents too.
Yes.
I grew up really in a real bad situation. Duct tape on the mouth, hands tied behind your back type thing, And
well, you act like that's a type thing.
Well, not like that.
It's not a very common experience,
right? But that's what
duct taped in the mouth and your hands tied behind your back.
Right. It was.
Was that like a regular experience?
During the early years, yeah, and as things got older, as things progressed further, there was a lot more physical demand on me to hold certain positions for several hours and stuff like that. So you're 6 years old and you have to stand at a certain angle for 6 hours while your dad just sits there and watches TV.
You were tortured.
Yeah. Not allowed to eat while everybody else is talking about how great the food is and all this other stuff, and then you get sent home, just sent to bed. That type of thing. And because of that, because of the isolation, for many years I held a lot of resentment.
Oh, who wouldn't?
Had no social skills. Still struggling with them today, But the thing is, at a certain point you go, if I don't address, like you pointed out, he didn't confront his resentment. If I do not confront my resentment, I don't have to confront my dad, because that's only going to lead to more resentment because he's never going to admit to anything.
Right.
Right? So I have to confront the demon in me. I have to confront the resentment.
The demon he created.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My own proclivity to act out the way that he did. If I don't confront that, then I will act out the way he did. I'll torture my own child. I'll torture other people. I'll harm people verbally, physically, all kinds of different ways. But it's a matter of, I've got to get that resentment out of the vessel so that the vessel will be useful.
When did you discover this?
When
did you discover or come to the grips with the idea that you were harboring deep resentments? Because I think most people are blind to that. Just like many people don't know they're an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
But, they drink every single day and wake up with a hangover. And like, I just like to party, bro. Right. What are you talking about?
They don't understand that that's alcoholism, dipshit.
Right. But resentment's the same thing.
Yeah.
You could wake up and you're pissed and, you don't identify that with the past. Mm-hmm. You're just like, I'm a bastard.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, when you do not... I'll answer your question. Your question was, when did I come to that realization? I want to say... right around Hurricane Harvey, I was homeless. I was in my car, and...
what year was that, by the way, for us non-Houston or Louisiana natives?
2017.
Okay, not too long ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. I was homeless. I was in my car, and I started to realize that every so often my life goes down this path. I had been homeless at this point like 3 times. This was my 3rd time being homeless, and every so often my life goes down has this cycle of, I'm doing okay, and then I crash. I'm doing okay, and then I crash. I never do well.
Right, right.
Emotionally, financially, any of it.
Sure.
Any other kind of lead that there is that you can toss in there,
Uh-huh.
And while I was in the car, I started to come up with, okay, why does this keep happening?
Yeah, a good starter,
right.
but not a great finisher.
Never a good finisher.
Yeah.
Right? And I started to think about how I was still holding on to, well, my dad did this to me, my mom did that to me, my brother did this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Never let any of it go. And as much as I thought talking about it helped, because I would talk to people about it.
Yeah.
As much as I thought talking about it was helping, it wasn't, because I wasn't letting it go. I wasn't addressing the fact that it was creating this very cold-hearted, very angry individual.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
You can see people physically transform when they talk about trauma in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and they're right back in the trauma as they bring it up. I've talked to a lot of people that have dealt with really terrible things inside their life, and I get it. You know, sometimes you need to just let it out, but you can also see it come back to the person. You know, it changes your whole chemical makeup.
Well, that's the difference between just talking about it and living it every single day.
Right.
And that was where I was. It's like I would talk about it, yeah. I'd talk about it like it was just facts.
Your story, right?
But yeah, it became not only the story of my past, but the story of my present and the story of my future.
You were that guy that had lived this terrible childhood, and now you're a man, and you know you're like, dude,
still living a terrible life, still reliving a terrible childhood as an adult.
Yeah,
and that's when I started to look into what do I need to do to fix this.
So in 2017, were you more of like your father's role, or were you still finding abusive people?
I was still finding abusive people. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's something else. It's like at home we learn, in conflict we manifest, and life itself is a form of conflict. And what I had learned at home, I was taking into relationships. I was seeking out specific kinds of relationships that were usually people who were obsessed with power, and they wanted to abuse. They wanted someone to abuse, and I was that guy.
Have you ever been a power-driven person?
You know, that's a good question. I don't think so. I've never really thought of myself as a power-driven person. But deep resentment would cause me to lash out as though I had some kind of power, which I never really had.
You're trying to claim whatever power you can.
Exactly.
Right.
So it was a demanding certain behavior from people who were
vulnerable enough to be kind to you.
No. People who were kind, I was very kind to.
Yeah.
But people who treated me a certain way, I would demand certain behavior from. And so I got into these little ego battles with them.
Oh, right.
And so it just over the course of the next 2-3 years, I had to spend some time thinking about, okay, what is my core problem here, right? And this is actually, it was during that time that I developed the idea to go by a particular moniker, and that's where the Black Wolf came up. And when I started to search for what is my actual problem, my problem was resentment, and I had no identity. I had no idea who I was, right? And then I started to look at, okay, so if I don't know who I am, what does that mean about what I came from? You see, that means that they don't know who they are. So that's not my problem. And that's what I kept trying to address. I needed to address my problem, which is I needed to come to an understanding of who I am and get rid of the resentment. And only then can I become useful.
So at that point, did you just like submit to the idea that I'm going to have to do some inner work? The more important part of life right now is me working through these resentments. And I'm gonna function as a human, try to get out of this homeless situation or whatnot. But I gotta work on this inner turmoil first before I go and write a book or start a podcast or whatever else.
I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, none whatsoever.
What had you done up to then, were you acting? Were you doing any of creative work?
I had done some. I had acted in some local films. I was working as a salesperson in the mall. But again, I kept having this cycle of doing okay and then crashing. And at one point I was working for a guy installing commercial doors, and he started to take advantage of me, just as had been done many times before.
Sure.
And it was actually as a result of helping him out or working for him that I ended up homeless that last time.
Ah.
Right? And so
I worked with someone and ended up homeless before too.
it's fun, isn't it?
Terrible.
Right?
Terrible when you invest, in a relationship. I think the only relationship more important than financial is romantic. So it's very, you're putting a lot in when you're helping someone build something that's supposed to bring livelihood, you know?
Exactly.
And you're committed. And when there's betrayal in that kind of way, it's an attack on who you are. Because you're putting effort to try to better your life, and here you go, end up ruining your life.
Yeah. But see, one of the things that I found was that I was constantly seeking out people who portrayed themselves as having a sort of power. And I figured if I could latch onto that person, they can kind of pull me along and I'll be all right? But what ultimately ended up happening was I just found myself in another wolf and scorpion relationship.
So you need to figure out how to find your own power, right? Be dependent upon, like we've talked about a few times, autonomy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was telling you off camera before we start this episode that every hero I've ever had has disappointed me.
Yes.
And I think that we are, as men, especially men who got a late start inside life because of trauma, things have, we weren't the guys that were 25 owning our first home, with the kids and the wife and saying, hey, look how great life is. Man, I'm so blessed. And there are people like that, and I don't hold any resentment towards those people. I congratulate them, and I think that's wonderful. I wish I could have experienced that. That would be
so do I.
Would be kind of cool. But there's a lot of us that haven't experienced that, and we haven't given up on life. And what we tend to do is we tend to find role models, heroes, people that project power and leadership, and try to latch our train onto theirs because it's easier to just kind of roll on with these tried and proved people than carve our own path, which is probably what we're destined to do anyhow.
Exactly. I think something happened. I think that there's actually a benefit to people like us who have gone through a lot of trauma not having that early start.
Sure.
And I think that benefit is if we did have that early start, it probably would have locked us into that resentment. Yeah,
I would have been much more of a tyrant,
tyrannical,
possessive,
you're not going to take this away from me.
Manipulative type of person. And I recognized in my early 20s and probably all the way up till I was 30, I was engaging in power plays. I was obsessed with being someone that others looked at as a successful person. Yeah. And because I was obsessed with that, I failed big time. And I became homeless. I became a 30-year-old paper boy. I had to really get humbled. And once I let go of the idea, you can't just let go of the idea. At least I couldn't. I didn't just let go of the idea of having power. I started asking myself why do I want people to think I'm valuable because of this or that.
Yeah.
And it all kind of came down to I really don't care. I just want people to like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had to accept that people will like me as I am, which is a hard thing to accept.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
especially if we don't like who we are.
There's no other choice.
Exactly, right?
So, you got to like yourself enough first. Luckily for me, I have a woman that loves me.
Yeah.
And I got to see a reflection of somebody that does care for me. And I think that kind of helped me put more value in myself. And I stopped being so much of a trickster and trying to con people into enjoying my company. And I started just saying, all right, well, at least one person likes me for who I am. Maybe not everybody else will, but I'm just going to present myself as is.
Yeah.
And
see what goes from there.
See what kind of happens from there. I think that, in a sense, I undervalued myself for a long time because my ego was squashed so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying a lot of stuff that was my experience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you pointed out something. I don't mean to cut you off again, but
go ahead.
You pointed out something there. You said, you were obsessed with having a certain power, right? Again, Lao Tzu, controlling others, that's strength. But mastering the self, that is true power.
Right.
I think that's when I started to change the way I viewed power and the way I viewed what I had been through. If I can master myself, then I will be a powerful man, regardless of anything else.
Sure.
And it's a struggle, though.
And then you have to ask yourself, too, you have to be like, are these things that I want because somebody else says this is virtuous? Or is it because I truly want it myself?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And you start to model like different archetypes of like what a good man is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And say, hey, maybe I'm this guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then like, am I really this guy, or am I also just playing the same trick? Am I just trying to con people into liking me by being good in this virtuous in this kind of way?
Am I trying to convince them? Yeah.
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 Like, one thing I'm dealing with in 2020 is because of this pandemic, I've gained a lot of weight, and it's not just because of the pandemic, it's because I'm eating shitty and I'm not exercising. So let's just say, cut the bullshit. I'm eating shitty and I'm not exercising, so I'm gaining weight. And I start to ask myself every single day, because it's starting to bother me, is it bothering me because I want people to think I got my shit together and like I'm this healthy guy?
Yeah.
Or is it because I legitimately don't feel good as I am?
Exactly.
And I think if I were to be real honest with myself, I'm fine with who I am today. I don't want it to get more out of hand.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to have to reverse course at a certain
at some point. Yeah.
But right now,
and that's tough.
There's enough stuff going on where I'm comfortable with just being in this manageable place where I'm like, all right, it's not out of control. And that's not virtuous. It's not like I'm not being able to post, hey, look it, I'm cutting the weight. Hey, look it, I'm getting inside shape. I'm doing the right things.
Right.
But it's also not destructive because I'm not like consciously destroying myself.
Exactly.
What I'm doing is I'm just maintaining while I'm working on other things that I prioritize as more important. And then that's my own personal power that I'm actually able to do that. And it's only took my whole life for me to be able to decide, hey, I'm going to do this here because I want to do it. And I think it's the right thing to do for me. And I understand it's not universally the right thing to do.
Right. And see, that's one of the things that I think is like, I caught myself constantly seeking what I saw everybody else having. And the only reason that I wanted it was because grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Sure.
Right? And so I remember working in, 10 years ago, working in Willowbrook Mall. And I saw this kid walking by, and somehow I ended up overhearing a conversation with him where he's talking about his brand new Beamer. And I was like 32, 33, something like that, maybe. And this kid was 25.
Right.
And I was like, you know, I wasn't jealous of him. I just felt like, here I am working my ass off, and I can't even get a decent car, a reliable car. And he's sitting here, 25 years old, got a Beamer.
Right.
You know, what's the deal here? But that's the thing, is like, I had forgotten that years ago when I was a kid, one of the things, I never prayed for material gains.
All right.
Because I didn't think that was important.
Sure.
And even today, I don't really think it's important. I just need something reliable, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a box with wheels and an engine, right?
Uh-huh.
But what I did pray for, wisdom.
Yes.
And I think that is something that is sorely lacking. I think that the lack of wisdom is causing a lot of the major issues that we have in this country right now. A lot of the major issues that we have in society. Mm-hmm. It leads to the canned responses we were talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that you pointed out, you know, there are certain things that are not universally needed. I think there's one thing that is universally needed, and that's wisdom.
I agree with you, but I also think that wisdom is one of the more difficult things to obtain.
Exactly.
Because
in all you're getting, get wisdom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom isn't something you can obtain without having experience. Mm. So it's the difference between that 25-year-old person that maybe life is living this charmed life and they have all the material gains. They might, you know, have a really great existence, but if they can't conceptualize how lucky they are, mm-hmm. because they haven't experienced any lack, then they're miserable. And I have had the luxury of being around a lot of wealthy people in my prior occupation, mm-hmm. and I saw a lot of discontented wealthy people.
Yes.
And I realized that
quite common.
Very, very common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So wealth isn't something that I desire. I do desire access, and what mm-hmm. I mean by that is I don't want the door to be shut on me, mm-hmm. because when I have a particular vision or idea, I'd like to get it out to the world.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily I want an abundance of paper money.
Yeah.
I want an abundance of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like to work,
mm-hmm.
and I want my wife to be happy. So there's things that, you know, my wife likes that I don't value as much. Mm. But luckily with this whole reselling job, I've been able to find a way to give her some things that are, you know, designer or whatnot, mm-hmm. for a lot, without paying these dumb prices for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've always had the same kind of feeling about cars. I have always just looked at function. Mm-hmm. I never really cared. I have driven some nice cars, and it's not that big of a difference, mm-hmm.
To
me from driving a nice car to driving a...
It's a car. I've been in some Jaguars. I've been in some... I was a state inspector in Texas, and where I would inspect people's vehicles, make sure that they were safe and roadworthy and all that. Mm-hmm. And I've been in some really nice cars. But it's still just a box with an engine and wheels.
Yeah,
it's gonna
I
get me
worked the
from point A
same
to
job
point
in
B.
California, except they call it inspector inside there.
Making sure the smog's there.
Making sure the smog's not. It's having, you plug something in to the OBD2 system and see if any codes pop up.
Right, exactly. That check engine light is on and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's great visually if you were looking for a certain look and you're trying to, achieve a goal cinematically. I would maybe want to rent a car for a day. But in terms of possession, I just don't have that. But I don't think it's bad to have. And I've never been a material-based person, and I don't think
don't identify yourself with it.
Yeah.
Don't make that who you are.
Don't make that who you are. And if you like nice cars and you happen to, have a good sense of self, by all means, treat yourself, have a nice car.
Yeah.
I do believe it's an abundant universe. I don't think you should deny yourself things. Also, if you don't experience some things, you may not even know you want them. Like if I told myself forever that as long as I got a place to lie my head, I'm fine. And I still believe that. But I feel much more secure, like having a place. I thought I wanted a home until, we rented a home earlier this year and had to deal with the upkeep around the home.
Yeah. It's fun, isn't it?
Not so much fun. So I do want to own property.
Right.
Just in case something goes terribly wrong in my life, I got a place to go. But I don't really care so much about home ownership and acquiring debt. Now, I want to own a home that I can afford.
Exactly.
And maybe rent it out and just know it's there. And probably live in an apartment so I don't have to fix my own stuff.
Exactly. and see, here's the thing: is it what you want? You can't actually have if you're held back by resentment.
That's 100% true.
And if you're constantly, I used to have my own apartment and I worked hard to get that apartment and I was so happy to finally have my own place, right?
Yes.
Then I lost it because somebody wouldn't pay me at a job, right? Now I could continue to hold resentment against that person.
Right.
But where would I be at this point? I'd still be sleeping in my car after a hurricane.
Yeah.
You see. So, and that was actually one of the things that was holding me back was how angry I was at that person.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It will hold you back in ways you don't even realize. You won't even know how. It's doing it.
Absolutely.
It's doing it.
Yeah, for a while I was really angry because I had a crappy business deal where I was working with a couple of rich kids in Calabasas area, and we were starting a record label. And I bought a bunch of the equipment. I was living in my car to kind of not pay rent and get this project going. And we were about to release our first press package. And a couple of days literally before it was all said and done, one of the guys just said, "Hey, we had a creative difference in the studio. We had many of those. This one wasn't even that extreme, but he just said, "Hey, you're not coming back here. We're done."
Wow.
Pulled down the website, wouldn't release any of the videos, and I threatened to kill him. I was going to kill this guy.
Wow.
I had friends that were just out of prison. We were going to just, hang out inside of his house and murder this guy. I was ready to do it. I put my whole life into this thing. I didn't really care about anything other than this. I was a single-minded person.
Yeah.
And
how old were you?
I was probably about 27, 28 when this happened.
Wow.
And, he ended up telling me, if you want to do anything about it, take me to small claims. And I talked to my father at the time because, the police were called on me and I was on probation for having a DUI. I was already in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. And
I decided not to act on, sit in front of this guy's house anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I had to let that go. But my first reaction was to write a bunch of diss music towards him. I did. Got very little gratitude or gratification for doing that.
Yep.
And then I just presented myself as like some badass afterwards, where like that was my attitude, fuck everybody. And for a little while, I shut the door on many relationships. People later told me, you know, you're a really fucking nice guy and cool guy. I'm glad that we're working together now. But when I first met you, you were a fucking ass.
Yeah.
And like, I wanted nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And it was because I was presenting myself. I was projecting all of the negative shit this guy was doing to me to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
You know, here I didn't even know I was presenting myself as an asshole. I was trying to defend myself. I had just gotten, you know, the rug pulled out underneath me. I had dedicated a year and a half of my life to this project. Wasn't having sex. Wasn't pursuing anything other than just trying to build this record label. Living inside my car, thinking I was doing all the right sacrifices.
Right.
And it was just gone. So because it was gone like that, I put on this exterior of no one's going to hurt me anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing was pushing everybody away.
Exactly. I've been down this road. This happens a lot because what we do is we begin to assume that this one experience is the way the world works, right? I've had enough experiences where the people I defended were the ones that stabbed me in the back.
Yeah.
You know? And even 2020, I got shamed for being white at a cigar shop I've been going to for 14 years. And then the manager of that shop shamed me for my depression. And both of the people that were involved, I had defended against people who were attacking them when they couldn't. And so I could sit here very easily and go, well, I'll just never defend anybody again.
Yeah.
Right? But what happens at that point is the wolf can't help but be loyal. The scorpion can't help but sting.
Right.
Right? That's what we said in that first podcast.
Sure.
Right? Is it, if I take what happened to me and push it and project it onto the world that this is what the world is, then I become cruel and I start to act out the things that happened to me.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing, resentment.
It's a dangerous thing.
From resentment is born cruelty.
Yeah, you know, you presented that phrase to me and it made sense to me because, I mean, I've become cruel based on resentment, but I could also, you know, see how a lot of people don't want to swallow that truth pill because
they don't want to face their own resentment.
They don't want to face their own resentment.
I'm innocent.
And it's a lengthy process too, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully that helps some of you guys. To end abruptly. If you enjoyed these semi-longer conversations, then let us know. We'll start pumping out some longer form podcasts.
Yeah, I'm enjoying these conversations. So.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Boom.
Boom. Was I cutting you off too?